Today, I'm going to try to help answering a question that's asked again and again. Degrees and jobs, and is it worth going to a university? I get amazed at the question itself, but let's look at a few misconceptions around that question. And also, I'll try to weave into my own story into answering that question. The first misconception around this question is actually you don't need to go to a university to become a billionaire. And quite a lot of times, the three big stories you hear around this is Bill Gates didn't go to a university or dropped out of university. Richard Branson, the billionaire, didn't. Ralph Lauren didn't. But there's a lot of special, rare circumstances in how these people in various generations became billionaires. But it's also useful to look at some other names. Rory Gates, Jennifer Gates, Holly Branson, Sam Branson, Dylan, David, Andrew Lauren. They all went to universities. And these are the children of the billionaires. If those billionaires didn't believe that going to a university is worth it, why did they send their children to universities? Just think about it for a minute. They have enough money, they have enough connections, they have enough social capital, but still their parents decided to send them, and those children were motivated to go to university and transform further their lives. And that's quite important when people ask the question whether it's still worth going to university. There's other big statistic about billionaires and universities. 70% of the billionaires across the world, not just in the United States or the UK or Western world, across the world, 70% have degrees. Let's look at business leaders, not just billionaires. Fortune 500, largest corporations in the world. FTSE 100, largest companies in the UK. Fortune 100 tech companies, the modern companies that rule the world in terms of tech. 95% of the chief executive officers of all these companies have degrees. And that higher education was essential for them to crawl up those ladders and become business leaders of those great corporations. And also, many of them are founders of those companies. Also, there's another second misconception around the question is this whole aspect of student as a customer. University is a seller, student is a buyer. And it's not a traditional transaction, buyer-seller transaction. Higher education isn't that. And if you look at simple examples, let's say you're going to Levi's shop to buy a pair of jeans. The shop doesn't put a qualification criteria. We will look at what clothes you're wearing before you enter our shop, right? No other shop would say that. Universities look at pre-entry criteria before they take the students. Also, if you go to Marks & Spencer or buy a holiday, they won't examine you for 3 years and then decide whether or not to give a degree or service or a product. How many shops do that? Okay? So in terms of a university and a student, it's not a buyer-seller transaction. Universities are platforms to develop relationships, to develop character, to build character, of course, to transform lives through education, higher education. And it is not a buyer-seller transaction in any shape or form. There's another big issue, especially in the UK context, which is student loans. Student loans in the UK context is a misnomer because we talk about debt, burden on students, the fees, and so on. Of course, you need to pay money, or somebody needs to pay money for the universities to deliver education. But let's look at some facts. In terms of student loans, especially, if, let's say, you go and try to buy a BMW car on a car loan, When you take a car loan, you start paying immediately every month. And if you don't pay your car loan or a home loan, they will take your home back or a car back. But let's look at degree loans or so-called loans in the UK. If you take a student loan from the student loan company in the UK, once you finish a degree and once you get a graduate level job above certain threshold salary, then only you will start paying your loan back, right? Which car showroom or a house seller will give you that option where have this house, have this car, experience it, live in it, drive it, and once you enjoy it, if you earn certain money, then only we'll take money from you. If you don't earn that money, keep the car, keep the house. Right? Which loan tells you that? The student loans, the so-called student loans are exactly that. You don't pay a penny if you don't earn or get the benefit from the degree and start earning above certain threshold. Then only you pay any money back to the student loan company. So it's a huge, huge misunderstanding in terms of student loan or debt burden. It's not a burden if you're unable to pay. So that's quite an important aspect in the UK context. The third one, which is very, very closer to my heart, people saying too many people are going to a university these days. Too many people. So many people shouldn't go. So who are these too many people? Who are not supposed to go to a university? And who will decide that it is too many people going to a university? My story is, I was one of those too many people who is not supposed to go to university, who would supposed to do other jobs. I was born in southern Indian village, and predominantly, when I was born, my village was dependent on agriculture, farming families. Once you each reach age 6, everybody worked. Child labor is not an extraordinary or a rare thing. It was common. I started working at age 6, so I jokingly say I have 36 years of experience. I'm only 42. So everybody worked. My grandparents didn't have a school to go to. There wasn't a school miles apart. My parents couldn't finish primary school. So in that context, growing up in early 80s in that farming village, something extraordinary happened. A teacher came from the town to set up a school. The circumstances were such, there was no appropriate building to actually start a school. So she started the school in the village temple. That was only decent building available. From that point, about 8 or 10 children started in that school. And she taught in English. And that little aspect and nudge made a huge difference in our lives. My mother learned English alphabet to actually teach me, though she didn't finish primary school. And that little nudge made a huge difference in our lives. When it came to high school, we needed to go to town. We literally need to travel 3 hours a day to actually go to high school, to and from. And from that point, we went to universities. Our parents worked extremely hard to send us to universities. And I know the stories in reality where people have to sell their farmlands to send their kids to the universities. It wasn't easy. Everybody worked so hard. Those were the circumstances in which those children started school in a village temple, were able to go to universities by working hard. When we went to universities, we needed to travel 5 hours a day to and from to actually go and come back to home and study for a degree. Many of those children who went to universities, and many failed in those children who started, went on to become geophysicists, genetic engineers, software engineers, and so on. And without university education, we couldn't have traveled that distance in a single generation. In a single generation, we were able to transform our lives from possibility of not getting actually educated at all to having degrees, not just one. I was able to have a master's and a PhD as well. That single generation travel could only happen through the power of education, the transformative power of education. The primary education is important, but the higher education, going to university, not just educates you in a special field, but also opens the world to you. It did to me, and it did to many of my friends who started education with me. So that was a bit of quick story in terms of how education, especially the university education, play a phenomenal role in transforming lives. But let's also look at some numbers. This is the research done by Department of Education 2 years ago. This removes the misunderstanding that too many people are going to university. 29% of population in 2007 in the UK had degrees. 40% had degrees in 2017. So that's a substantial increase. So if too many people are going to university, people shouldn't be getting decent jobs. People should be struggling to get more money or the salary if they have a university degree comparatively. But let's look at this. In 2006, people with degrees earned £10,000 more per year than people without degrees in the UK. 10 years later, after substantially more people graduating from university, that graduate premium, the difference between earning power, remained exactly the same. So people with degrees still earn £10,000 more per year throughout their lifetime than people without degrees. So too many people are not going to university in that sense. People with master's degrees earn £15,000 more than people without degrees. So though more people are going to university, that graduate premium still continued. So it's very, very important to ask those people who say too many people are going to university, they shouldn't be going to university. The one question you should ask is, did your children go to university? Why did you send them if you don't believe that too many people shouldn't go to university? So that's quite an important, and we need to base our arguments before we answer based on real numbers, real stories, and transformation of lives behind those stories. This is the sad statistic, but I have to show it. Trussell Trust and Oxford University 2 years ago done phenomenal research, socioeconomic conditions of those people in difficulties and who are accessing food banks in the UK. Especially after 2008 Great Recession, the number of people using food banks has grown phenomenally. The number of socioeconomic conditions, but one aspect really caught my eye, which in a way is sad. 94% of people who accessed food banks do not have a degree. I'm not suggesting degree is a silver bullet for everything, but having a degree provides you resilience, provides you flexibility of opportunities, provides you the strength to go through difficult socioeconomic conditions because it prepares you for life, not just educates you in a specialist field. Of course, universities need to do a lot more. Universities need to work much harder. The world is changing around us. The graduate jobs are becoming scarce due to a number of things: automation, artificial intelligence, and a number of other challenges. There's also growing aging population in Western world. But on the other end, the millennials, the new generation of youngsters having huge mental health difficulties. These are the challenges that are real. Suicides is one of the biggest killer of young people in the Western world these days. Also, obsolescence of technology. The skills that you learn yesterday are no longer relevant today, and the universities need to work hard to handle those aspects. Businesses complain that universities are graduating people without life skills. We need to focus on that as universities. At the University of Bolton, in our own small way, we're working hard in terms of addressing many of these aspects. 4 years ago, we developed something called Graduate Attributes Matrix for Employment, where we inculcate in our students life skills. Doesn't matter if you study nursing, motorsports engineering, software engineering, or any other subject. In University of Bolton, every degree student will gain those life skills. How to be resilient, how to be a global citizen, how to communicate well, how to be collaborative, how to be a team player. These 10 graduate attributes are embedded in every degree in this university. And that goes some way to actually not only teach specialist area like engineering, medicine, nursing, and so on, but also prepares you for life. And many universities are working hard in terms of solving those problems and those challenges. And finally, of course, higher education has a transformative power more than any other route. But imagine those humble beginnings of the mankind, the invention of wheel, to development of International Space Station, Imagine that happening without universities. The genetic engineering, advancement of medicine, advancements of space science, and so on and so forth. What other route could have achieved that apart from universities, the higher education, and preparing knowledgeable people? I personally do not have or could not see another option, another equally viable option of where you could prepare young people towards their life through good education, through higher education. So, degrees and jobs, is it worth going to a university? Think different and think again. Thank you.